Thanks for tuning in to the Proline Handicapping Show on the web. Coming up, the Raptors and Pacers in Saturday's NBA, the Spurs and Lakers in Sunday's action, plus Villanova facing Notre Dame, and San Francisco taking on Gonzaga in college hoops. But first, let's hear from our Proline panelists as they break down last week's playoff action.
Well, hi, everybody. We're back again. It's Proline. I'm Dave Kokan. Scott Sprecher and Glenn McGrew along. Jim Feist is off this week. It's the first of our two big game shows, if you will. We'll kind of recap how these teams got to the big game because we're not supposed to say Super Bowl. The NFL doesn't like that. So we'll call it the championship game. And, of course, next week we'll be doing a pretty good-sized preview on the game itself between the Bears and the Colts. We'll talk about some Super Bowl propositions and things like that, or big game propositions, excuse me. But in any event, we'll talk about how these two teams got to this game. And after a big run by the underdogs the prior week, the favorites managed to get through in this week in completely different fashions. The Bears just taking the Saints apart in the second half of their game. The Colts mounting an amazing comeback against the Patriots. I got that game right in the end because I had the Colts in the game. But I handicapped the game all wrong in a sense, and I also had the over. But I handicapped the game all wrong because I sat here last week and said, well, I think it's very important that Peyton Manning gets off to a good start in this game, or the Colts are going to be in big trouble. So naturally, they fall behind 21-3, almost 28-3, and then have this stirring second-half comeback, and that was surprising.
You ought to see my write-up from last week. I'll send it to you because I had the game. Well, it's kind of, here's what we had. We had the Colts in the game, so we got the win. But I had talked about the competitive nature of Peyton Manning throughout the first half would keep this game pretty close, and in the second half, they would completely wear down a banged-up, aging, slow-footed 34 defense of the New England Patriots. Well, that part happened. But at 21-3, I thought, I'm not going to have a chance to wear this defense out. And Peyton Manning did look bad, and the offense looked bad. I got to tell you what, the Colts defense gave up 34 points, but they played a very good game, I thought, because they had the special teams problems that led to some short field situations for New England. And if you look at the Patriots, after they got that lead of 21-3. They had no more drives.
Well, the Patriots.
I mean, it was all special teams. It was the pick for a touchdown against Peyton Manning. So I thought the Colts defense played pretty well.
It did.
And it shows how good, guys, of a coach Bill Belichick really is, because I bet you New England, if you stack the talent of the healthy bodies that were available in this game, they're probably the 6th or 7th best football team talent-wise in the NFL going into that game with the talent that was available to them because of injuries. And they still came within a whisker of making it to the Super Bowl. I'm a Tony Dungy fan. He outcoached Dungy and his staff. And Dungy almost did a Schottenheimer, guys. I was talking to Glenn after the game, and I said, you know, when they were down 31-28, about 7 minutes to go in the game, they threw about a 55-yard pass, Manning to Clark, down to about the New England 18. What'd they do then? First down, run the ball for a yard. Second down, run the ball for a yard. Third down, run the ball for a yard. And they ran it like they were trying to set up a field goal. They kicked the field goal. The announcers, I happened to be on driving at the time, so I was listening on the radio, are talking about, well, he's like setting up for a field goal in the middle of the field. I'm like, there's 7 minutes to go.
Yeah.
And I remember remarking to the person that I was with at the time saying, there's a difference between Dungy and Belichick. Belichick goes for the touchdown. If he doesn't get it, he kicks the field goal. Dungy's looking to tie the game, to extend the game.
I'm not
Got kind of
sure.
fortunate.
I don't know if he was or not. At that point, I liked the idea, not on third down perhaps, but I think they thought they could catch him by surprise on third down. But they were hammering New England's defense by that point. The Patriots, you know, the comments have been made prior to the game that, hey, you know, that was a tough game in San Diego.
Yep.
And you know, sometimes it's just coach speak. I think it turned out to be kind of accurate here. Plus, apparently, it was like 9,000 degrees in the RCA Dome. And that,
they kept it real hot in there.
That did not benefit
This is a really fun segment here. Dave's telling you how he had the right side in the game, and Scott, maybe we'll check with everybody else, the camera and everyone else. I mean, I had New England. I mean, thanks a lot for bringing the whole subject up again.
Well, I mean, I had the right side for a while, that's for sure.
It was, but you know, in a way, you're right. Maybe first and second down, run that football there. But let's face it, and they were doing well against the Patriot defense. But on the other hand, for the whole second half, they were throwing the ball with impunity. I mean, they could do anything they wanted to.
Yeah.
They really could. So I agree with Scott. You had to. I mean, I was glad to see that happen.
Sure.
Bottom line is, though, when you get ahead of New England, you can't sit back. Not that New England necessarily did that, and you can't settle for field goals, and that's what happened. Great field position for the Patriots, and I don't know how many times in the second half, and yet they couldn't do more than maybe 1 or 2 first downs, get close enough and kick a field goal. And I knew when that happened, each time they kicked a field goal, the worst thing that could happen because the Indianapolis wasn't going to be held to.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, in spite of all that, they ended up with 2 timeouts and enough time to get it back down the field. Brady happened to make a bad pass. They were already at the 44-yard line of Indianapolis. This was, not that far away from the Patriots getting into the end zone. And I'll tell you what, one more completion there instead of the interception. They're knocking down around the 30-yard line. All the pressure's all of a sudden back on the Colts defense. It would have been interesting to see if Brady had been able to make that clutch pass and make it happen, but he actually he threw a pretty bad pass right into coverage, and that was the end of that.
And you're right,
2 bad
Scott,
passes
too.
late, by the way. The series before that, before Indianapolis scored the touchdown, 34-31, and the ball around midfield, 3rd down and 4, I think it was, and he threw that pass. I'm trying to think of who the receiver was now. And he was yelling at the receiver afterwards. You should have gone out. Well, I'm sorry, but Brady threw the ball inside.
Yeah.
So he can yell and scream all he wants about him going. He didn't throw the ball outside. He threw the ball inside.
There was a receiver. He had a right to throw.
Well, that brings up an interesting question. Do you think they're going to look somewhere for another quarterback next year?
Yeah, they've got to. They're done. If Brady's
this is twice in the same game.
I'll tell you one guy they might be looking to replace after Sunday. The guy with the Marty Feldman eyes, Riche Caldwell.
Oh, my goodness.
Here's a guy, and I think, I'm just guessing what happened here, but I think the first drop pass, he was so wide open, he didn't try to catch it with his hands like he's supposed to. He tried to cradle it. And then the second one where he was wide open, I think he was still thinking about the first one. They just dropped it again, and those were 2 huge drops.
Biggest eyes I've seen in the guy since Singletary. Remember, you used to always have those close-ups of him right before the ball was
like Dizzy Gillespie with his cheeks on. But anyway, I'll tell you what, and in the other game, talk about guys who are going to be replaced. Fred Thomas. We got an open seat on Proline this week. I mean, that pass. Listen, I had the Bears. It was 18-14 at the time. We got the fortunate grounding penalty in the end zone that made the cover. And then, of course, that wounded duck. I mean, I've thrown passes about like that in my life, and that was a horrible pass that I bet you 9 out of 10 defensive backs pick off.
9 out of 10.
9.5. We can't. I mean, does Thomas qualify as a defensive back? Because he'd be the one.
He was a defensive halfback in that game, or half a defensive back. He was. That one play where Berrien eventually found his way to the end zone. It was huge if you had the Bears, obviously. I couldn't believe the coverage on that play. I mean, the guy was obviously rattled because they'd been going after him. Yeah. And at some point you knew they were going to. He'd been struggling coming into the game. But how did he miss that one? I mean, just he had to. It looked like he completely lost his coordination.
There's a guy I think this really happens to some guys. This was another one where we wrote up in our analysis of that game. We had the Bears, and we said, Grossman might be having off days every other week or whatever, and he had a great week the week before. But he's going to have a chance to snap out of any funk he's in because all he's got to do is go after Fred Thomas. And if a guy like Thomas, who I'm sure heard that a million times preparing for this game, heard how much he's struggling, I think the confidence factor and then the stress of having to make the play is ringing between your ears. And I think that adds to the situation, and it causes him to overplay on that game and not play like he did. And he just gets completely burned by a wounded duck. Plus, you don't really expect a quarterback to throw a pass like that in the NFL, do you?
No, you don't. Speaking of throwing a pass, I mean, the Chicago team now in the playoffs, 30-plus points both games. You wonder a little bit, though, you don't want to get too excited about that. You look at the 2 defenses they were up against in the Seahawks and the Saints, and you wonder just
but they're still moving the ball. And their running game. I mean, if you have 2 first-rate running backs.
Yeah, and they do. Yeah.
Benson's really improved as the season's gone along. And Thomas Jones is a different type of a running back than Benson, so they've got this real nice mix. And Lovie Smith really did a heck of a job of spotting them properly last week. He kind of wore him down early with Benson, then brought in the more elusive runner with Jones for most of the key carries in the second half. Tell you what, they're a well-coached football team.
I love the New Orleans Saints, or Sean Payton, and of course the situation in New Orleans from last year with the Hurricane led to him being the coach of the year. I don't have any problem with that, but Lovie Smith is my coach of the year. And that, first of all, sticking with Rex Grossman when it would have been so easy to change quarterbacks with all the pressure that apparently he wasn't under, that we thought he was, to do it. Lovie Smith doesn't care what you and I think about the Chicago Bears and who should play quarterback, and he did a great job of sticking with him. And in the game this past weekend on Sunday, I'm sitting there going, man, get Cedric Benson out of there. He's good. But get Jones in there because he has that, and he'd bring him in, like you said, did a great job of spotting when Jones should be in there, when Benson should be in there. I can't wait for this Super Bowl. I think we're going to see a fantastic contest, not only played-wise, but by the coaching staffs themselves. Two coaches who know each other's strengths and weaknesses
Don't tell him
inside
too much
and
because
out.
we want him to call back next week for our Super Bowl.
Well, I'm not
show.
telling him all. I just think we're in for what's going to be a pretty good coaching
Let me
game
say
plan for
one
both
thing about
teams.
Lovie Smith and the great decision not to change, get off the horse with Grossman. I mean, when if he'd have brought Jack Concannon back as your backup, and he'd been better than any choice that he had this year.
Also not for Abilene.
Abilene. It really wasn't a real difficult decision, but.
No, I thought it was.
No, it was.
I actually thought it was. He was getting a lot of heat.
Yes, he was.
Brian Greasy, while he's not a superstar, is a more proven veteran, and the thought was that the phrase he kept hearing over and over was that he can do a better job of managing the game than Grossman can, because the talk was, hey, listen, the Bears have a great defense, and all they have to do is not screw up on offense and turn the ball over, and Grossman's making too many turnovers, so he should be bringing Brian Greasy into the game. This is what all the experts were saying, and, my point was, I didn't disagree necessarily with that, but the point I was making throughout the year on my radio show was, he's at practice every day. You guys aren't.
Exactly.
I mean, I think he's got a better idea of who can quarterback his team than you do.
He's a great coach, no doubt about it. And, speaking of the other team in the running game, you're talking about Adai and Rhodes. Mm-hmm. And there's been times this year, this is nitpicking, by the way, obviously, like I did with Brady, but there's been times this year when Joe Adai, when I watch him run, he tiptoes at the line of scrimmage too much for me.
He's still a rookie.
And, well, he is. That's what I'm saying. He's got a great chance of being a great running back. He's very good already. For my money, I want to see Rhodes running the ball in key situations on 3rd and short and big down situations because he hits the hole with he's a maniac.
One thing on Rhodes, though, Rhodes, he's gotten rid of it this year, as far as I can tell, but he was fumble waiting to happen.
Sure he was.
And,
yeah,
and that's
before
why
the season.
That's why he's never been a regular.
Right. But I was going to say that I thought Adai, even though it was a parting of the Red Sea at the end there, it didn't matter. Adai, whether those guys were parted or not, he hit that hole with reckless abandon. That final touchdown that they scored against New England, so I was glad to see that. But in this Super Bowl game, I think Dungy is going to have Rhodes in there a little bit more than he has so far in the playoffs because, boy, I just, like I said, again, Adai, a good, solid, young running back who has a chance to be great, but right now doesn't pop the hole like you need to, I think, in big game situations. Again, nitpicking a little bit, but I think he's just a little bit away from being that great running back.
Well, we got a treat coming up, don't we? Like you said, should be a very good Super Bowl.
It should be. I think that the two teams are good storylines. Obviously, the Bears are one of the most popular teams in the NFL. I mean, they travel extremely well in terms of their fans. Any team from Chicago, it's one of those great sports towns.
Sure.
And so the Bears, I believe it will be a big edge to the Bears in terms of the people down there. Last year's Super Bowl, it was like 99-1. I mean, it was all Steelers people, and the Seahawks are like the other team down there. I think it's going to be somewhat similar to that the Bears are an enormously popular national team. But the Colts are a great story because of the comeback they had against the Patriots, the fact that Peyton Manning, who is arguably the most popular personality in the NFL right now, all you have to do is look at the national commercials he's got, the fact that he's finally made it to the big game. It makes for an intriguing situation, and I think it's really going to be one of those fun events, and we'll see how it plays out on the field.
Sure, definitely. So, looking for a great game. This week, the line, by the way, moved from, 7 down to 6.5.
Yeah.
We'll see where it goes next week.
The total might
sitting
go
around
up.
48.5. They've been kind of changing the juice a little bit. I've seen a couple 49s out there early on. And
that as it gets closer to game time, I think you're going to see that 6.5 pretty well hold. Could go to 7 on game day, because on game day what happens is a lot of the bettors just come in on the money line as far as the dog is concerned, and therefore on the spread itself, the majority of the action ends up on the favorite. That's on the last day, so you might see a swing back to 7. It's going to hang right around that number. I don't think it ever goes through 7 to 7.5. The total, though, I think as we get closer, I think this might go up. I would not be surprised if we see 50 in this game eventually. Because
it tends to happen with Super Bowls. You got the public; they want to play the favorite and the over.
And you've got two teams. Obviously, the Colts are a very offensive-minded team, and they're back to normal as far as that goes. As far as
all it took was one game, really. Sure.
That's right. And the Bears have been scoring a ton of points. So I think you're going to see overaction coming in on this. And again, next week we'll have a special edition where we focus in on the big game, and we're going to take a look at some propositions, and hopefully get you on the right side of some of those. But this week, we got a lot of basketball to look at. We get college and pro hoops, and we're going to come back and look at a matchup between two NBA squads, the Pacers and the Raptors, when we return on this edition of Proline.
Up next, Saturday's NBA action with the Toronto Raptors and the Indiana Pacers. But first, we'll hear from Primetime's Glenn McGrew, who is coming off another big basketball weekend, going 3-1 with his top plays. This week, his Power Play package has 3 Game of the Year winners available for just $20.
Of course, folks, if you've been with us since the beginning of the show here, you heard me mention, sad to report, I lost my playoff game of the year. New England, of course, falling to Indy, a tough loss. But I tell you, overall, you have to look at the whole season. Another phenomenal football campaign. I tell you, you can go all the way back to 2003. Primetime clients, they just continue to roll. 767 units in college football since 2003, up 290 more units in the pros. And, of course, basketball remains on fire. Went 3-1 this past weekend with my top basketball plays, an insider call on Wisconsin over Illinois, thrilling game, and an in-the-paint call on Bradley over Wichita State. Now, this week we're going to concentrate on college basketball, and what a terrific offer. 3 conference Game of the Year releases right now on my $20 Power Play line, first thing Saturday morning. $20 Power Play line, 2 conference games of the year. Now, that's reason enough to call all by itself, but I'm sweetening the offer. I've got an awesome bonus for you. My college dog of the year, an incredible college basketball trifecta. Both games of the year, my dog of the year, $20 on my Power Play line, 1-900-226-0410. That great college basketball weekend. Now, we're going to talk some pros, though, right now, right?
Yeah, we are. And by the way, somebody asked me about this. Who's watched the show? What's with the sunglasses? You're trying to be Joe Cool? And actually, it's got nothing to do with that. These legs bother me. But it's not so bad with the glasses on. That's why the sunglasses are staying on. It's got nothing to do with being cool.
Yeah, right.
At my age, cool is just waking up in the morning and being able to breathe. That's cool, okay?
Leather jacket, shades, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, the Raptors, they've been on an under rampage. And there's a reason for that. They made a conscious decision to change what they've been doing. And they were running all over the court and firing up shots at will early in the season. And they say, look, we're going to make a commitment to defense, and we're going to start being a lot more selective as far as the shots are concerned. And 2 things have happened. Number 1 is they've been going under almost every game lately. Number 2 is they're winning a lot of basketball games. Guess what? If they defense, you know, if you don't have Phoenix Suns or Dallas Mavericks type of offensive talent, don't try and outshoot the other team. Defend them. This has been an outstanding coaching job, and they're going to very likely win their division this year.
Well, they're getting points in this contest too. Now, the one bad thing about the Raptors in this situation here is they play Friday night against the Boston Celtics, so it will be their 3rd game in 4 nights.
Game?
It is. That's one good point. And 2, they've got a great bench. I mean, they've been going deep, 9, 10 players every night, so that isn't a concern. These 2 met earlier this year. And interesting, Bosch, of course, he's the key man on that team.
Playing great.
He had a horrible night. He was 6 of 18 from the field. They still won the basketball game. And as you said, Dave, they're playing great defense right now, and it's really paid off for them.
Well, I mean, there's no secret as to what I'm going to do in this game, because I believe I've given out on the service 10 straight plays on the under with Toronto. Because when I read this information, I thought, you know, this is going to be some value in this number until the line catches up. I'm just going to start playing them under. They've had 1 game where they went over in this stretch. That was by a half point, and if you played it early, you won that too. So basically, I'm still playing them under as we're sitting here and taping this, and you know, why get off it?
Well, I guess, you know, the way they're playing defense, you'd have to call them the Eastern Conference version of the Memphis Grizzlies. I mean, really focusing on the defensive end of the court. Maybe not. But, you know, you look at Indiana, solid home moneymaker this season, almost 2-1.
Yeah.
3 days off now since our last game. Toronto playing the second of back-to-back nights. But Toronto has done this 9 times this season. They've played back-to-back nights. And they must not have a friend in the scheduling department, because all 9 times that they played the second game of a back-to-back nighter type of thing, all 9 times have been on the road.
Wow.
How ridiculous is that by the schedule maker? So this will be 10 straight times now that they've played away from home on the second of back-to-back nights. They've won 4 of those 9 straight up. Pretty impressive. They've covered 5 out of 9. Not fantastic, but not bad when you consider the situation. 5-4 against the spread, playing on the road in the second of back-to-back nights. So I like the way they're playing defense. As Glenn just mentioned, they're going really deep in the lineup. They played well against Indiana, as Glenn also mentioned, with Bosch not shooting well. So I think of the side here. Also, by seeing that this team is playing the second of back-to-back nights away from home 9 different times, and they're 5-4 against the spread, it shows again an example we talked about a few years ago, that the line maker is taking that into effect or into account and increasing the line of where it should be. Add another point and a half or two.
About it, yeah.
And a lot of those old school things that people used to play in the past in the NBA, 4th game in 5 nights, second of back-to-back nights on the road. You got to be real careful nowadays the last 4 or 5 years, because the line maker has really caught up and added on to it to take the money from the public. So I got to go with the Raptors in this one also.
I'm glad you feel that way. Also, T.J. Ford, of course, over the years, the one drawback for him, he's had a lot of injuries.
Sure. And
he's been hurt. But this Jose Calderon, I mean,
nice
like,
job.
wow, where does he come from?
They,
He played
they are
very, very well.
deep. You consider Mo Peterson, who, was a guy playing, maybe 33, 35 minutes a game last year. He's playing a lot less this year. And Peterson is not a stiff.
Well, that's because they've got a lot of other players.
Yeah.
And getting back to the defense, too, I mean, of course, forget Phoenix, Washington game the other night, a matter of fact, where these two teams scored a bunch of points. But, I mean, scoring is up. But this team, this Toronto team, their last 3 road wins, 86, and 77 points. I mean, that's, that you're playing well.
By the way, also, the last 2 times they've been in this back-to-back situation on the road, they've won big, like 17 and 13 points outright, the 2 games. So I think Toronto's the way to go here. I agree with you guys.
I think you'll be getting 4 or 5 points in the contest, too.
Oh, sure.
I do like what they've done with the personnel, and it just shows you that you can be limited. But if you play as a team and stick to the game plan that's out there, you're going to steal wins. And in the Eastern Conference, I mean, the conference is just brutal. That's going to be enough to get them a good seed if they can.
Now, you don't mean brutally tough either.
No, I mean brutal. All right?
Tough to watch.
Tough to watch.
Boy, I mean, really. Is there a decent team in the whole conference? I mean,
Maybe this team.
Miami will be okay. Well, yeah, but I mean, Toronto. Yeah. Toronto matches up with any of these good Western Conference teams in a playoff series. Bye.
Yeah.
It's not going to take.
Sure.
It's nice that they got all this depth and they're playing good defense, but not going to do them a whole lot of good when it counts. Well, they almost did beat. Was it Phoenix? They lost by a point.
You're right. Yeah.
So that's. Maybe they're the team to beat. Who knows? And maybe not. Who's your choice for Coach of the Year this season? I know if they had the voting right now, I know who my choice for Coach of the Year will be, and I'll tell you about that, and we'll look at the matchup involving his team when we return on this edition of Proline.
Coming up, Sunday's game between the Spurs and Lakers. But first, we'll hear from Smokin' Dave Kokan, who is on a 15-3 run in pro football and won over 200 net units of profit in basketball last week alone. This week, he has a terrific 3-game offer.
Yeah, there were times during our regular run on Proline on USA Network where, I didn't have the best week in the world and had to say so. That's the nature of the business. I don't have to say anything about that right now. Boy, I'm telling you, it is just going great. I'll read you some of the highlights. You'll have to sit back and relax when I warm up a cup of coffee. I'll understand. This has been sensational. It's been one of the best runs I've had in years. 15-3 on my last 18 pro football releases, including a sweep last weekend. College bowls were absolutely unbelievable, including the bowl game of the year with Florida State. The basketball, this month, college and pro, I'm just knocking them out. Winning night after winning night after winning night. I won over 200 net units last week alone, and I'm on pace to do the same thing this week. I mean, it has been absolutely spectacular. 23-8 is my best bet record right here on Proline. And the special I had last week, which was a $25 offer, that went 4-1. Plus, everybody who called for that offer or bought it on the website is also playing right now for free because I decided to give them the rest of January's action plays in my personal service at no cost. And those action plays are on a 31-11 run right now. Now, everybody's happy, including myself, especially myself, because I like giving out winners. I do not like giving out losers. I'm going to come with a free offer today. I've got 3 personal service plays. These are outstanding selections, and they're going out to all my clients. I want you to have them at no cost. Call the toll-free number 1-800-547-4224. That's 1-800-547-4224. there's no hype games here. I don't have any, there's not a game of the month or game of the year or anything like that. All it is 3 really strong plays that I think are going to get to the winner's circle, and they're not going to cost anything. So make sure and make the call. 1-800-547-4224. I mentioned before the break that we'd be talking about a game involving my choice as the coach of the year. How can it not be Phil Jackson right now? Could have been Jerry Sloan, but the Jazz have come back to earth a little bit, and although Sloan's doing his usual great job. But you look at this Laker team. I thought they might make the playoffs again this year because, they made it last year, and I've always thought Jackson was a great coach. I actually thought they were a little bit better than last year, so I figured, they'll slip into the 6th, 7th, or 8th spot, somewhere in there. This team's playing tremendous basketball. I mean, they could very well end up with a 4th seed. They're not. And how is this possible? They get Kobe and a bunch of other guys, and Lamar Odom.
Well, I was going to say, actually, not a bunch of you got a second guy who's tremendous, Lamar Odom. But if somebody told me that if he's going to be out there, then I would say almost as important as Kobe, and I just can't see how this team could win without both of those people.
I did not think he'd be a good NBA player. He is. Smush Parker, who bounced all over the place. I think he was playing backup in the IBL. He's been tremendous for this team. There's nobody, can't be anybody left out there who thinks Phil Jackson only won because he had Michael Jordan. This guy is a great coach.
Oh, he had Scottie Pippen also. That's why we don't get him. But anyway, you talk about Lamar Odom. He had Kwame Brown playing his best basketball ever before he got hurt earlier this season. I mean, he gets the most out of everybody on that team. It's amazing. And even Kobe, one of my favorite players as an individual, has bought into the team concept. And, you see him actually legitimately rooting for the guys that are out there on the court when he's sitting on the bench.
And by the way, he doesn't have to be pacing up and down and trying to get on TV all the time. He sits in his seat.
Exactly.
Which is the old Red Auerbach method. By the way, Auerbach seldom got up. This Bynum kid, I think if Jackson stayed there, because he's got a good history with big men. He was a big man himself in the NBA. This kid's going to be a hell of a player down the road.
You know, what I like about Jackson also, and I've always liked this, even when he was with the Chicago Bulls, but it was easier to do then because of a guy like Michael Jordan and a great player like Scottie Pippen on the team. But it's even more impressive that he's doing it now. I love the fact that when the team goes through a little bit of a lull, which all NBA teams seem to do every single game, no matter how good or bad they are, he doesn't always go right to the timeout and start ranting and raving. He'll sit there, not say a word, just as calm as can be, and just has that look on his face like they're going to play. I'm going to let them play through this. And it gives your team such extreme confidence in themselves that if they follow their game plan and they do what Jackson tells them, they're probably going to have a good shot at winning the game at the end of the contest. Every once in a while, finally, he just gives in and has to call the timeout. But I just think it shows your players at this level, especially, these guys don't need to be coddled. No. You don't need to have to tell them how to run every single scheme they have on offense, or if the defensive end, if guy's not coming over when he should and helping out. And he lets the guys play through some of the lows they go through. I think it really puts a lot of confidence and respect into his players. But in this particular game, guys, I was going to mention,
as they're playing the Spurs.
Right, they're playing the Spurs.
This is a Sunday matchup, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. And the Lakers have won both games so far.
Yep.
They've won pretty handily. They've forced the Spurs into 38 turnovers combined in those two games. And Kobe had an outstanding game his last time out against these guys. It's kind of funny about the San Antonio Spurs. This is the difference between a great organization, which is the San Antonio Spurs, and let's say a bad one. The Spurs, a few weeks ago, lost, 3 straight.
Right.
And if you go to their website down in San Antonio, if you go to their newspapers, and you can see these guys apologizing up and down. Tim Duncan apologizing to the fans for the poor basketball they're playing because they lost 3 in a row. I think that's outstanding. And then you've got talk all of a sudden, they lose those 3 in a row. Trade rumors abound. They're talking about trading away some of the players that aren't holding up their end of the bargain, which is great. Then you see him saying, well, we're going to drop Robert Horry's minutes down to single digits, and we're going to bring in sharpshooter Matt Bonner. Unfortunately for the Spurs, Matt Bonner's knee didn't agree to what was going on, and he's been out with that knee injury ever since they talked about him getting Robert Horry's minutes. So they're struggling a little bit right now, but what I don't like about San Antonio, so it makes me a little bit hesitant to jump on them in double revenge here, is that they're 3-7 against teams that would be in the playoffs right now in the Western Conference. That's a sign that San Antonio has slipped a little bit.
They have.
And it just makes me a little hesitant because I think this is the Spurs and the Mavs are two teams that the public is so high on and so focused on, they can take away a little bit from the Lakers' mystique or the Lakers fans team type of thing that gives them always an extra point or two against the spread that you have to lay with the Lakers. Because it's the Spurs, now we get a legitimate line. You don't get that extra half a point or a point going against the Lakers. So a real tough call for me. I'm going to lean towards San Antonio.
Well, it is. The other tough part about this is they just might not match up very well with the Lakers. Sure. I mean, the Lakers really handled them easily in that game at San Antonio. They went out and got creamed the next night at Dallas in a horrible scheduling spot. But the fact is, you get through that road trip 1-1. That's like picking up ground. And that was a very impressive performance. Well, in a game where you would have thought, well, you know, the Spurs are in revenge here, and they're at home. They made the number really high, and I didn't get involved in it. But my impulse was, this is not a good spot for the Lakers. They're going to lose these 2 games this road trip. And they didn't. And watching that game, San Antonio was having problems matching up with more than just Kobe. The Lakers were quicker than they were.
Well, it might be on the defensive end. It's interesting. Usually when the Spurs lose a game, or games, in this case losing twice to the Lakers, it's because one of their 2 prime guys, either Duncan or Parker, have off games. That wasn't the case. In both these contests, these guys put up big numbers. I had it written down here. 88 points, 35 of 60 shooting from the field for Duncan and Parker in those 2 games. 30 rebounds between them, 21 assists. So it wasn't like they played poorly. Kobe just had a remarkable, both games, 34 points. Both contests, just lights out. But anytime you get a chance to take a team like the Spurs, though, in a double revenge spot like this, I think you're going to get, because of the Lakers' success recently, I think you're going to see a real small number here. I don't think the Spurs will be favored by more than a point or 2, if that. So I think I'm going to kind of go along with you guys. Also, more of a suggestion to look at the Spurs.
You mentioned Tony Parker having good. You know what he's done? If you look at the last few box scores, Tony Parker's taken less shots, fewer shots, and getting more guys involved, which is what he's got to do for San Antonio to be a player again when it comes playoff time. And so if he can, you know, he's got a game tonight on Friday night against Memphis, and that will likely be a reprieve for San Antonio with this real tough schedule they've been playing. You know, Houston early in the week, the Lakers coming up on Sunday. But as long as Parker starts to distribute before he shoots the ball, then they've got a chance. And I think they get past the Lakers here, but I can't make a huge play on it because I think Dave's right. The Lakers do give them matchup.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get involved in the game. This is one I'll pass, not only here on the show, but as far as the selection goes on Sunday, I can't see a strong opinion on this contest for me.
Doesn't double revenge with the Spurs, and I'm going to say this.
Sounds great.
Yeah, but here's the thing. What I was going to say about it.
Who's not going to look at that?
I was just going to say, you know, I get involved. Squares win too. Okay, but isn't this the square play? I mean, the Spurs and double revenge. Don't you get a lot more action, a lot more people thinking they want to jump on the Spurs in this situation than the LA Lakers? But
if this game was next Sunday, on the same day as the big game, I wouldn't say that because you'd have casual bettors getting involved who had no idea. They just would automatically gravitate to the Lakers because they're the more popular team. But this Sunday is a different story.
And also, by the way, squares and wise guys, my definition, a wise guy never buys a bad line. That's the difference. If a square likes the Chicago Bears at 7, or let's say at 7, and misses out, he's still going to buy them at 6.5, where a wise guy might say, you know what, there's other games out there. That's the difference, I think, between a square and a wise guy.
I don't know. I think there's a little more to it than that. I have a tendency to think that the not as sharp guy will just look at numbers and make simplified conclusions based on those numbers, and therefore, and that's why they come up with so many favorites. Well, sure, this team should beat that team, and really, if you need to know more, just watch some of the shows on the networks like ESPN and stuff like that, because the talking heads are, boy, you won't find anybody squarer than ex-players. In fact, they look at things in purely logical form, and almost always come up with
nothing logical about our business.
If they ever do come up as a group with the underdog, run to the favorite.
Yeah, exactly.
And a good example of that was the Saints-Bears game. I mean, every one of the TV guys is picking the Saints, and it's like, these guys are in trouble.
I did a lot of radio shows last week, and I would say probably 80% of the guys that I do the shows with who are just, you know, good radio hosts and analysts, we're looking at the New Orleans Saints. I'll tell you one thing, though. By the way,
they're not square bettors, by the
right.
way. Forget the betting. These guys don't bet. And that's what makes them the squarest of the squares, so to speak. They don't bet at all. And you can get a good gauge sometimes as to whether you're on the right side of the game or not by hearing what they have to say.
The biggest lesson you can learn is when you're in this business for a while, because when you first get into the business of betting plays, and I'm not talking about 11 to win 10, I'm talking about serious money or handicapping for a living, you learn a lot that let's say 3 years after you started, you look back at that first season when you were betting big money and said, wow, I can't believe I made that bet there, or I can't believe so you do learn a lot from being in it. So you got to give those guys a little bit of a break that are on ESPN.
I am.
Yeah, I know you are.
They're not bettors.
Right, because
so
they're not bettors.
They're not out, and they're not telling you who to bet on. Which we are. I mean,
Sure.
we're telling you who to bet on, and there's a big difference.
Sure.
So we have more culpability as far as making sure we know what we're doing.
By the way, did anybody see, I got to change gears for just a minute before we move on in basketball. Did anybody see Sean Sutton, the end of the Oklahoma State-Oklahoma game the other night, when they're up by 5, which was about where the number is? And this is just purely, just speaking on my part, conjecture, whatever you want to call it. They're up by 5 at the end of the game. The line was anywhere from 4.5 to 5 throughout the day. And Oklahoma made a tip-in right after the buzzer went off.
I know.
To cut
in fact, I thought
and Sutton walking up the
good.
court looks at the official and goes,
No good. I know.
what did it matter to Oklahoma State whether he made that or not? Just throwing out some discussion there, that's all. I was glad he got his way.
Yeah, we were
Oklahoma
really,
State.
absolutely.
I'm told. Now, I was never in an Eddie Sutton coached locker room, so this is hearsay. Eddie Sutton used to use the point spread as a great motivational tool for his team. Now, he wasn't betting the games. I don't want to cast any aspersions.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
with
what
Eddie
Sean's saying
Sutton,
also.
Any whatsoever. But what he would do would be, for instance, if his team was a 17-point favorite over somebody, he'd say, those guys in Las Vegas, they're crazy. They're not nearly that good. And that team's pretty tough. And the flip side of it was that they were an underdog against somebody. He says, see, we're getting no respect from those guys in Las Vegas. And it's not a bad idea for a coach to use that.
It could have been just a competitive thing for Sean Sutton. I'm not trying to say anything there, but I just thought it was kind of funny to watch at the time. And then, of course, it doesn't hurt if the guys buying your season tickets and paying your paycheck, basically, the guys who are filling the seats behind you, the fans, if they cover their spread, it doesn't hurt, I mean,
especially in the Bedlam series.
Exactly.
They don't exactly. That was a good game, by the way. Oklahoma State lived at the foul line, but that's what happens when you're at home.
Then they
That's
build a
part of
9 or 10
basketball.
point lead, and then
They'll play again later on. I would assume
Right.
that Oklahoma, and who knows, it might be the flip side. Jeff Capel, rather, doing
great
an
job.
excellent job with the Oklahoma Sooners. Okay, we're going to come back, and in fact, we are going to go to the world of college basketball. A good Big East matchup between Villanova and Notre Dame when we return.
Next up, Big East basketball with Villanova and Notre Dame. But first, we'll hear from Smash Mouth handicapper Scott Spreitzer, who nailed both of his Game of the Year releases last weekend on his way to a perfect 6-0 Sunday sweep. This week, he has his first 5-game countdown of 2007.
Welcome back, everybody. Talking Big East basketball in just a moment. First, quick note, folks, talking big basketball and football winners at Smash Mouth Sports right now. In fact, this past weekend, we did it again. We are now 4-0 with playoff games of the year. Cashed our wild card game of the year. We cashed our divisional round game of the year. Last week, our conference championship game of the year and playoff total of the year. And we're hitting 68% with all sides totals and opinions in the playoffs. In basketball, we cashed on Saturday our revenge game of the month winner with Michigan as they whipped Purdue. And how about Sundays? Don't forget about Sundays and complete your entire weekend. We are undefeated, perfect against the spread in basketball in 2007 on Sundays. A perfect 6-0 in college basketball. We were 6-0 in all sports combined last Sunday, and I'm going to give it all away today on Saturday. I have got a 5-play basketball countdown led at the top by a conference game of the year. You are also going to get a code on that report that'll get you my Super Bowl props free of charge and Sunday's basketball free of charge. You won't want to miss out. It's all available right now for $25. I'm going to count them down from number 5 to number 1, that game of the year. All you got to do is call 1-900-868-3350, just $25. You make the call, I count them down, and then you count the cash. Now we're talking some Big East basketball. We got Nova against Notre Dame. And I got to tell you guys, I was looking at Notre Dame statistics recently, and they're 4-3 since that 5.2 to 2.5 assist to turnover ratio went up in a puff of smoke.
That's when the guard
Baccalaureate,
yeah,
and his puff of smoke. And ever since then, they're 4-3. But I'm gonna throw this out there. Notre Dame is one of the biggest home road dichotomies in basketball the last couple of seasons. They've lost 3 games on the road. They've won 4 games at home. Would they have been any different if he was still in the lineup?
I wonder a little bit.
I think they might be a little bit different in that. And we knew this was going to happen because the kid's a good point guard, and his replacement is probably as talented as he is offensively, but turns the ball over a lot.
Torrey Jackson.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, not only that, I mean, I think I put a number down here. Jackson's 5 of 27 from three-point range since coming in for him.
It's a bad thing.
And of course, McElharney, 46% on the year. And I tell you what, when you have a point guard that can shoot it from outside, it sure makes everything easier for him, because then you got to get up on him, and then you can penetrate, where Jackson's had this problem. And I've watched the last 2 games, and boy, they are really pressuring this kid and getting right up in his face.
Here's the rub on this game for me, and if I play this game, it's going to be Villanova. First of all, they're going to adjust the number for the revenge.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. This is another thing that the odds makers, if you're a bettor, this is one of the things you got to realize right off the bat. The odds makers are smart, okay? If you spot something, they spotted it too, and they're going to put it in the line, and there's going to be an overreaction to the revenge here. Villanova's playing, what a surprise, a lot better as the season gets going. This team lost a lot from last year. They had to be down. Jay Wright's an excellent coach, and they are clearly playing at a different level now as opposed to earlier. I'm not meaning this is a slam on Mike Bray, but I think Wright's a better coach than Bray, and I expect that. I think Notre Dame at the beginning of the year was just pounding teams on talent. They were just better.
Sure.
Now things are starting to even up because other teams are getting more cohesive, and I don't see Notre Dame improving. In fact, I think they're diminishing somewhat and have not been as good a basketball team lately. I did play St. John's against them on Tuesday and won that game. More than anything on the home road deal with Notre Dame. But the fact is, if you look at that game, and money was pouring in on Notre Dame, which it shouldn't have been.
Didn't make any sense at all the way this team plays away from home.
And plus the fact they're just not as good a basketball team.
St. John's isn't as bad as what they have been lately. They've improved.
But
a little bit. They're a pretty bad basketball team.
They're not as bad as what they were.
No, but there's the case there is that Notre Dame, I think a month ago, even on the road, Notre Dame handles that St. John's team. The point is Notre Dame isn't getting better as the season goes along. They're either staying at the same level or regressing. And I think that you're going to start to see them struggle even with the number at home as the season goes along. And they've been dynamite against the spread at home because they've been killing teams there. I don't think they kill Villanova. And even revenge, I think this is going to be a real good game.
Big revenge.
Well, take a good
15-point revenge, too.
Yeah, never in that game.
Exactly.
That's the most points, I think, since Bray has been at South Bend that the Irish have given up. So it's
Triple figures.
Yeah, triple.
They beat up a lot of softies in non-conference action this
kidding.
year, the Stony Brooks of the world.
Well, take a look at the Curtis Sumner, the forward for
Right.
Villanova. He has been hurt, and Shane Clark came in and had a great game for him. But the Wildcats aren't real deep either, so if he isn't back, Sumner, you might want to take a look.
Well, too bad about Curtis Sumner, too. This guy was going to be an NBA player.
Oh,
He's
no
had
doubt.
2 major knee injuries, and now the knee is giving him trouble again.
My biggest thing is I hope they're completely healthy because I do think that in this situation you are going to get a little bit of a edge from the line maker to go against Notre Dame because of the revenge. And also, you mentioned it. I mean, they're jump shot Charlies. We talked about this. I remember doing a Proline TV show. I think it was our final one of 2005, in December of 2005. I forget who they were playing, but we talked about how this team just stands outside and throws up 3-pointers. And, last Sunday, we had Notre Dame as a knockout, a 15-star KO play against South Florida because South Florida's horrible defending the perimeter. So even without McElharney in there, we decided to jump on Notre Dame. But this week against good players, you hit it on the head. The kid who takes over for him is 5 for 27 from area code 3. So all of a sudden that 43, 45%, whatever they shoot from behind the arc at home has to be adjusted. You can't just look at that blindly and say, wow, they're great from outside on their home floor because they don't have the kid anymore who used to hit 46% from out there. So you really got to make adjustments. And what happens is the public, I think, is still going to perceive that Notre Dame's a great play at home, and especially in revenge for a 102-87 loss. And I think you got to shade your side towards Villanova as far as I'm concerned.
I'm glad you brought up Jackson, the sub
Right.
for McElharney. And I did, when I said that I've been watching the last couple of games, I said they've been on him. What I meant is they've dropped back and they've laid off him because they know that he can't shoot from outside, and that's made it very difficult.
They pressure him more when he's getting the ball up the court.
Well, then, yes,
He
definitely.
does make mistakes. These coaches pick up on this stuff. They're pretty good. This is a pretty good coach. Boy, what a job Mark Few's done at Gonzaga. It's just absolutely amazing that this has become one of the programs in the country. Gonzaga, they're basically on TV every Monday night now with the Big West game on the back end of Big Monday on ESPN. And so it pays to know a little bit about all these teams in the West Coast Conference. San Francisco and Gonzaga are playing on Saturday night. We're going to take an extended look at that game and try and get you a little bit of a clue as to what's happening in the WCC when we continue.
In a moment, San Francisco and Gonzaga. But first, a reminder that world champion handicapper Jim Feist has a monster 5-game offer this weekend, available completely free of charge when you call toll-free to 1-877-JIM-FEIST. That's 1-877-546-3347.
Okay, we're going to talk Gonzaga and San Francisco in a moment. Jim Feist is obviously not here right now. Jim, of course, will be at the Super Bowl like he always is for the big game. But in the meantime, he's ready to tear it up with some great selections. He's got a 5-game free package, and it's very easy to get. All you need to do is call the toll-free number 1-877-JIM-FEIST. 5 outstanding plays for this weekend. Obviously, they're all in basketball. You want to be a part of them, no cost whatsoever. Make sure to make the call to 1-877-JIM-FEIST. Well, Gonzaga hit the skids a little bit. They lost a few games. And
a few games?
No pun intended, right?
I didn't even think of that. That was pretty good.
And I was giving you credit where it wasn't due.
Yeah, it wasn't due. No, I do that once in a while and have no idea that I've done it. None whatsoever. Still. I love what they've done for West Coast basketball because this conference has got some good quality programs. Every team in the conference should be benefiting from this.
Hey, news to the nation, especially the folks back east. There is basketball being played west of the Mississippi.
I got to tell you, before we get into this game, I'm watching Alabama-Auburn on Tuesday night, and I don't remember who the analyst was in the game. And he says, I knew it was going to happen at some point. The SEC is that's my best conference in the country, and right behind them is the ACC. What? Look, there's some quality teams in the ACC. I don't think it's a great conference. The SEC has definitely got some very good teams in it, and it is one of the best conferences in the country. But if you don't think the Pac-10 is the best conference in the country right now, you're not really following college basketball this year.
Or you're heavily prejudiced.
Yeah, it is. The Pac-10 is flat out loaded this year.
I'm watching an analyst, by the way, if I could just talk about this for a second. I mean, I completely agree. The Pac-10, in fact, Glenn and I did a Pac-10 preview several weeks ago on our Sirius radio show and talked about the Pac-10. Boy, I wish I was in a Pac-10 city because I'd love to be watching and going to these games right now. The young underclassmen that have come into this league this year and last year, especially this year,
next year,
unfreaking believable.
USC's going to come in next year.
Hey, but look at the rankings right now in the Pac-10. You know who's the 9th in the Pac-10 right now? Washington.
Oh, yeah.
Find a ninth-place team.
They got one win while going into this week. They had one win after last weekend in the conference. But, I'm watching a former Pac-10 guy, and Steve Lavin, doing his analysis, speaking to the talking heads on SportsCenter and things of that nature, rating his top conferences in college basketball. He rated his top 6. No Missouri Valley. What is wrong with these guys? What is wrong with these guys? The Missouri Valley has proven again they can hang with Wichita State, which can't buy a win in the Mo Valley, goes out and whips LSU away from home, whips Syracuse away from home.
Isn't Missouri Valley Conference, aren't they RPI'd 4th right now?
Yeah, I got them as my 3rd top conference in college basketball. And you can make an argument for anywhere from 3rd to 5th probably.
It's basically the same as football. It's the same as football. They don't want to include these teams.
Sure.
Believe me, those BCS conferences, they were so upset when Boise beat Oklahoma.
Sure.
In college football, and they don't want to see Gonzaga making a run in the college basketball tournament. They might do it. I mean,
sure.
I don't think this Gonzaga team is quite up to past additions, but it's not like they're bad.
The thing is that the West Coast Conference I thought was going to be down more than they are. It's been a good conference, an under the radar conference for several years now.
San Diego last year.
San Diego plays well. Santa Clara's playing well at times in their spots. Even Portland at times when they're given too many points at home can sneak up.
Santa Clara's not bad.
Right.
It's a decent conference. I mean, it's not the equal of the Missouri Valley Conference or the Mountain West as far as those mid levels are concerned. The Mountain West is pretty good this year, but there's good quality basketball played in this conference. One of the teams that hasn't made the strides I thought they would, though, San Francisco. I thought when they changed coaches, I thought it would actually be a good thing for the Dons. I was not sold on Matthews.
Well, they're not getting wins, but they're getting a lot of covers. So it's been
But and they are covering some numbers, but they haven't picked up on the progress I thought they were making last year, where they were also getting a bunch of covers as road dogs and stuff like that. So I'm not sure. I think Evans is not the coach. I'm blanking on his name. I believe that's his name. They're not quite. They're one of the few teams in the conference that I don't think has markedly improved over last year. Nevertheless, anytime Gonzaga's playing at home, that number gets inflated, and it's tough for them to cover. They have not been. If you look at Gonzaga's point spread ledger at home, particularly when they're off a conference win, and in a non-national TV setting, they kind of let down their guard, and they'll do enough to win the game, but boy, double figures gets a little bit.
It's their own making. I mean, they've had such success over the last few years, not only obviously in the conference play, but because they play the big boys in non-conference action and then have done so well in the tournaments, they just become too big of a favorite, and it just becomes too big.
Plus, everybody's done it for them.
Exactly. We expected them to be down this year, losing Morrison.
Yeah,
sure.
What happened was the reason the line's so inflated, not only because nobody out there wagering, I should say 90% of the people out there wagering across the country aren't paying attention to St. Mary's and Santa Clara and teams like that. That's why you always get a lay more. Everybody knows about Gonzaga. But also, when they come out to start the season and they knock off North Carolina without Morrison, who's in the NBA now, the line's been inflated ever since.
I thought there'd be and I was wrong about this. I actually thought there'd be an adjustment down when they hit that what was it, a 4-game losing streak. And they were just awful in that streak. The Virginia game was a complete calamity for them. They found like 36-2 in that game, or some ridiculous thing out of the gate. I mean, they just never got into the game, and a lot of turnover issues. But that's not been the case. They're still laying big numbers, and you saw Portland slip in under the number with a late basket the other night.
Sure.
And it's interesting to watch the other teams when they're at home against Gonzaga. I mean, it is such a big game for these schools. St. Mary's 2 Mondays ago, I thought they were going to tear the building down late in that game at St. Mary's with the win. And Portland, it's not to say that any of the fans there were betting on the game, but they sure seemed excited when they scored that last basket on Monday night.
I know I was. We had a small family.
Well, now we got a big number in this game, too, and for that reason, I'd either lay off the game or I'd probably side with the dog in this case.
Well, you know, I think San Francisco's capable of giving them a game. I just don't think San Francisco – the difference is that while, for instance, the St. Mary's team, or maybe Santa Clara on the right night, is capable of actually beating Gonzaga, I don't – that's where I'm a little disappointed with San Francisco, is they haven't taken that next step to where I think they can win the game, even if they're playing well. And that's where it gets a little dicey because, you know, you're basically in a situation where you have to hang the number to get the money in this game. Nevertheless, if I were to play this game, I would go with San Francisco as well. All right, we're going to come back and we're going to give you our Proline best bets for this week and tell you about our special offers one more time when Proline returns.
Coming up next, our Proline Best Bets, the biggest selection from today's show.
For my best bet, we're going to go with the Toronto Raptors plus the points against Indiana. And I'll tell you what, if you love college hoops like me, be sure and call my $20 power play line first thing Friday night, Saturday morning. Doesn't make any difference. I've got 3 huge games for you. First, you're going to get 2 College Game of the Year releases, plus a monster bonus, my College Dog of the Year. All 3 plays, just $20 on my power play line. 1-900-226-0410.
Always amazes me how McGrew knows my best bet before I even say it. I'm on the Toronto Raptors. Your best bet is to call for my first 5-play countdown of 2007. It's available late Friday night. It's on the line right now for just $25. 1-900-868-3350. 5-play basketball countdown topped off by a college basketball game of the year. You make the call. I count them down. You count the cash. 1-900-868-3350.
I'm going to go to another game that we didn't talk about today. Why not mention UNLV? The Rebels just continue to get it done. Lon Kruger is doing as good a coaching job as anybody in the entire country this year. They've had injury issues all season long. They don't have any size. They're playing great ball. I don't like this New Mexico squad. I think Richard McKay may lose his job at the end of the year. No cohesiveness. Team victory here for the Rebels. I like UNLV to get a double-figure win, solid performance on Saturday night at the Thomas and Mack against New Mexico. That's a good play, I think, on UNLV. By the way, I did not mention this before, and I should right here before I get to my own special promotion. if you're into the NBA and fantasy basketball or college sports as well, rotoplay.com, they get these 2-week contests. There's nothing like it. I mean, go to the website and check it out. It's a lot of fun. You can win, and you can battle your friends or battle strangers. It doesn't matter. It's really good stuff. The most unique fantasy site I've seen, rotoplay.com. As far as my own stuff's concerned, I went through that litany of big winners that have been coming down the pike recently. I've been on fire. No need to go through that again. Let's just get to the offer because it's free. And here's the number, 1-800-547-4224. It's real simple. You make the call. I'm going to give you 3 really good games in college basketball for Saturday, and they're yours at no cost whatsoever. 1-800-547-4224. And now, next week, we're going to really delve into the big game, and we're going to have several prop plays that we like on our own. So there's definitely a reason to tune in next week. You're probably going to get, I would say, between the games we talk about in basketball, plus the big game itself and the props, I think you're going to be looking probably at getting about 10 really solid opinions next week. So make sure and do it. Meanwhile, enjoy this weekend. Be happy, be healthy, have some fun, win a little bit of money if you're involved. For Scott, for Glenn, for Jim Feist, and all the guys, I'm Dave Kokan. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching us this week, and be sure to catch Proline on the web next weekend, available Friday nights for more great insight.